He almost didn't stop that night, because the city was cruel in the way it trained you to keep moving, to look straight ahead and pretend the cold wasn't biting through your coat or your conscience. But something about the woman at the bus stop broke through his exhaustion. The way she sat on the icy pavement instead of the bench, knees drawn in, arms wrapped tight around herself as snow melted into her hair and soaked the thin dress clinging to her legs, barefoot on concrete that burned colder. Then pain, and for a split second he told himself someone else would help her, someone warmer, richer, braver, but the street was empty except for passing headlights that never slowed, and so he turned back, heart pounding, unzipped his jacket, and knelt in front of her as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. She looked up at him with eyes dulled by shock and pride fighting for space, and when he draped the jacket over her shoulders she tried to protest, lips trembling, saying she'd be fine, that she didn't need charity, but he shook his head and said quietly that it wasn't charity, it was human. And he could tell she wasn't used to being seen like this, stripped of control, stripped of status, stripped of whatever armor she usually wore to face the world. He offered to wait with her, to call someone, but she said no to the phone and yes to his company, and so they sat there together in the falling snow, sharing warmth and silence, and she told him in fragments how one bad decision had spiraled into a night she never imagined for herself, how power could disappear faster than money, how loneliness could exist even in boardrooms full of people who clapped for you, and he didn't know that the woman shivering beside him was the CEO of a global logistics empire, that the phone she'd lost was worth more than his monthly rent, that the company she ran employed tens of thousands of people who knew her only as a sharp suit and an unbreakable voice, because right now she was just a woman trying not to cry in front of a stranger who had given her his only jacket. When the bus finally came, she hesitated, fingers tightening around the sleeve, and asked him his name. Asked why he helped her when it clearly cost him, and he answered simply that once, years ago, someone had helped him when he was invisible, and he promised himself he'd never be the kind of man who walked past that moment again, and she nodded as if filing the words somewhere deep, stepped onto the bus, and disappeared into the fogged glass without another word, leaving him cold but strangely lighter, unaware that by morning his life would pivot on that choice. 3 days later he was called into the warehouse office where he worked nights stacking crates for minimum wage, certain he was about to be fired for some minor mistake, only to find a woman in a tailored coat waiting for him, hair pulled back, posture commanding, eyes unmistakably the same, and when recognition hit him, it knocked the breath from his lungs as she stood, smiled, and thanked him for reminding her who she was before success made her forget, explaining that the night at the bus stop had followed her into every meeting since, into every mirror, into every decision, and that she had ordered an audit of her own life, starting with the way she treated people she didn't need, and ending with a new initiative she wanted him to lead, not as charity, not as a reward, but as trust, because she believed the kind of men who gave away his jacket in the snow understood leadership better than half the executives she'd ever hired. He tried to refuse, overwhelmed, convinced there had been a mistake, but she leaned in and said softly that power was loud and kindness was quiet, and the world desperately needed more people who chose the quiet option. And as he walked out into the daylight later, job offer in hand, he realized that the coldest night of his life had turned into the warmest turning point, all because he stopped when it would have been easier not to. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that small choices can change entire lives, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the next story might be the one that changes how you see the world, or how the world sees you.